Okay, Mr. Million here, you guys, and this time we're in the lab. And what I'm going to do is today I'm going to go ahead and show you the difference between KVP selection and how it affects contrast. So again, it's not the controlling factor, but it does influence the image. So right now we're at the acquisition menu, and we're going to be using a hand and wrist phantom right now. So we'll go to the acquisition menu. So we'll go here to the upper extremity. And a lot of systems, you guys, they're touchscreen. In fact, this one I think is touchscreen as well. So you can see here. But we're doing a PA hand. I'll select that. I'm going to do 3 of them, so I'm going to hit it 3 times. And again, when you select the body part to the acquisition menu, everything is predetermined. When you're talking about digital systems, you have pre-processing. And one of the pre-processing features is your histogram, right? So again, there's a lookup table that assigns an algorithm that's going to tell you what type of grayscale should be used for that particular body part. So again, you can't see all this, but this is all stuff that's been predetermined, right? There's also a predetermined percentage of exposure that should be recorded by the plate, and that's DQE. So detective quantity efficiency is going to be a predetermined amount of exposure that is going to be recorded by the receptor. It's a ratio of input versus output, how much that signal is being recorded and used for the image. And then there's MTF, modulation transfer function. So I think I said I was going to save a video for digital processing, but we'll throw this in here anyways. So you have DQE, you have MTF, everything is predetermined. And again, here's our technique selection here. So right now I have MA, 160 MA times 0.012 second. So on this system here, you can see the small focal spot size, right? So again, there's only a certain amount of heat that will be impressed on the filament. Remember, inside the cathode, there's 2 filaments. We're using the small one right now. And we're gonna use 60 kV. So I'm gonna go ahead and make an exposure here. All right, X-ray clear. Okay. And now we're gonna go ahead and see the image here. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and increase the KVP. All right, so you can see here the exposure index is 3243. It's a little bit high, I'm a little higher in, but still, we want you to see the difference in the contrast on the image. So the next exposure I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 15% rule, and I'm going to go up. 60 plus 15% should be about 70, but I'm going to cut the mass in half. So we're going up by 15%, and we want to maintain the exposure, right? So I want to go ahead and just change the scale of gray, right? So I increased the KVP by 15%. I went from 60 to 70, and I cut the mass in half. So now I'm going to go ahead. I got it set up for another exposure here. All right, X-ray clear. Okay. Now take a look here, you guys. You definitely can see how the grayscale has changed. So because we went up in KVP, more of the photons are going through the object. That means more of the X-ray signal itself is going through the bone, going through the joints, and you're gonna have more of the detector hit by exposure. All right, I'm gonna do one more exposure here, just one more. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to 80 kV, and we're going to cut the mass down in half again. So we'll go to 0.5 mass. So again, we're going up in KVP and we're going down in mass to show you how the KVP affects the grayscale. Ready? X-ray clear? Okay. All right. So remember, every exposure switch has to be a dead man type switch. It has to have constant pressure. Right? Now take a look here, you guys. Look how gray this image is. So I'm going to go ahead and pull them all up here, and we can take a look. So we have the first one, the second one, and the third one here. So the first one here, take a look at the black and white. You see how it's shorter scale. You have a bigger difference between the densities. All right, so what I'll do is I'm gonna open up the field here. I'm gonna go back to single. I'm gonna go ahead and undo it here so you just can see the whiteness of the border here. We collimated really tight on this one, didn't we? That's pretty good though, we should collimate. And remember, you guys, cropping and shuttering does not take the place of collimation. Just keep that in mind. I just want to show you guys here what's happening too. Notice you get more gray around the edges because why? You got more scatter. So even though we collimated, there's scatter hitting the outside of the receptor. So during the histogram analysis, it's going to record all the signal that we have in the collimated field. But it also adds the unwanted exposure, such as this noise and this unwanted scatter that falls in there. But the system has a predetermined amount of exposure that should be recorded on the exam. So let's do this here. Now that we framed it out, we're gonna put it here. So let's do this, here we go. So look what I did. I opened up the frame so you guys can see how when you increase the KVP, you have more gray scale, right? So the reason why this happens is the more KV, the more X-ray photons go through the object. That means more signal is recorded. More signal means more densities. More densities is going to make the scale longer, right? So again, when we're talking about contrast, when you go up in KVP, you're going to get a longer scale of contrast. The differences between the adjacent densities and the exposure levels is going to be less. Okay, so that's why contrast lowers. So again, when you have less difference, you're going to have low contrast. When you have bigger difference, you have high contrast. Okay, so again, people get a little confused sometimes, but when you say more contrast, it's more black and white. If you say less contrast, it's more gray. So again, I just wanted to show everybody the difference between KVP selection and how it affects the gray scale. We went from 60 kV to 70 kV to 80 kV. So you can see as you increase the KVP, you're going to get more gray tones. So again, you're making the scale longer, and when you make the scale longer, it's going to be less difference, and that's going to be known as lower or decreased contrast, okay? So I'm hoping by seeing this, it actually helps you understand the difference between high contrast, short scale, more black and white, versus low contrast, longer scale, more gray tones, all right, and lower contrast, okay? Thank you.